blessings, podcasting session. You ask a lot of things, but it's the wrong fucking question, huh? And what? Say it's the wrong fucking question. Mike Golden and Chops, go tag him in the mention. Hit you with that 3 marks, that poly machine. Couldn't tell if the image was real, it's probably a dream. Don't ask to be your favorite artist. Be you, make your own 3D. From your own point of view, every shingle was singled out, now they all point at you. And the contract is void, so what you gonna do? Ask him what render engine is best, joke's on you. Pat Trace in the Monte Carlo, now it's time to take a cruise. Count your blessings, podcasting session. You ask a lot of things, but it's the wrong fucking question, huh? Say it's the wrong fucking question. Mike Golden and Chops, go tag him in the mentions. Count your blessings, podcasting session. You ask a lot of things, but it's the wrong fucking question, huh? Say it's the wrong fucking question. Mike Golden and Chops, go tag him in the mentions. Wrong fucking question.
Cheers, Chop. It's working.
Dude.
I think that we're live.
Are we live?
I don't know. Someone in the chat, if this is working and you can hear us, let us know. It's been a tough 24 hours as far as computer goes. You know how it is. Windows decides that it hates you, and the technology gods, say your stream will be postponed. Oh, someone can hear us. What's going on? We got a bunch of people in the chat. Guys, welcome. Thank you for being here. Cheers to you all. Yeah, thank you for your patience with yesterday. I'm going to try and pay a little bit better attention today to the chat, now that I'm not quite as frazzled. And yeah, happy, what day is today? Tuesday? Happy Tuesday to you, Chop, and to everybody else. Chop, thank you for joining me 2 days in a row.
Yeah, somebody had to, right?
We are, wait, what's the quote? I can't bring it to mind. We are defined by the quality of our friends. Let's say that. Just in case anyone's not sure what we're drinking Chop's favorite beer. I have yet another old can.
Oh, that one's nice.
Yeah. Dude, their classic labels are just phenomenal. And they feel so good. Armantis, we are drinking Pilsner Urquell. What Chop would argue is the best beer in the world. I don't know if I fully agree with him on that one, but it is a great beer.
It is the best beer in the world.
So we can at very least make it the official beer of wrong effing question. Does that make you happy, Chop?
Yeah, very much so. I even got a haircut since yesterday, so now...
I mean, you are looking great as ever.
Yeah.
I mean, your lighting's kind of rendering you red, which I think just means that on today's question, you are the dark side.
I'm the Sith.
You are the Sith Lord of today. Okay, so let's get into it. Chop. Should you do post-production?
First of all, okay, let's start with this. That's definitely a wrong fucking question. The much better question is, why would you do it and when, right? Because I don't think anybody can truly oppose the idea like, oh, no, you should never do it. It's like, we don't almost ever do it, but then it's also the question about what you consider to be post work. Okay, so let's start with that. What's post work for you? Except, I mean, besides being 90% of your actual work, but what's post work for you specifically?
Specifically,
yeah,
I define post production as any effect applied to an image after it's rendered.
Okay.
So, by that definition, if I use a LUT, if I adjust contrast in the frame buffer, or if I go in and I, paint over an entire image or add a new sky in Photoshop, all of that in my book is post-production. Right? And by that definition, everyone does post-production. So for me, it's really a question of how much post-production should you do.
Yeah, but that only tells that it's not really a not really a feasible definition, because then we can't really, kind of differentiate between yes and no, right? If
So
everybody does it. So let's make a different definition.
for today, we'll change that.
Okay, for today, let's change it. Let's say the way I usually see that is, when you say post work, I kind of get stuck on that work part, because if I actually have to do like manual labor to get some effect, as opposed to having my image rendered and pressing a checkbox, that would definitely fall into post work, right? So whatever I can get on this image without actually doing any work, like turning on a LUT, which is pre-installed, and whatever, adding a vignette, which is a slider, which you can do while it's rendering
Very
as
true.
well.
Very
So
true.
technically, you can do all of this, what I'm talking about, during the time the image is actually rendering. So it's not really post work. It's just something you click.
So here's a question of clarification for you. If I'm working on a set of 30 images and I'm finishing the first one and I go and I take a test render, I open it up in DaVinci Resolve, I do a whole bunch of color grading to it, and I export a LUT, and then I reuse that LUT back in for all of the rest of the images. Is that going to be considered post work, or
Only for the first image. I mean, once you take it out, right, and open it in another app, that's definitely post work.
I agree.
But for all the subsequent images, you didn't actually do anything, right? So adding a color effect is not something I would consider work at all. So technically, no, I would say no,
Okay.
right? So
Okay. I'm
my
willing to
general
play by that
understanding,
definition for today.
yeah, okay, but I mean, we can discuss the definition itself at a later date, and we probably will. But
Give us 20
I'm
minutes.
all for doing the no post, or better said, no work post, right?
Gotcha.
Whatever is no work at all, I kind of, that's okay. You can, for example, in Corona, you can just save the preset of your entire tone mapping panel, right? So it's both like exposure, vignetting, color balance, whatever the hell it
Blacks,
is, right?
whites.
You can
Yeah.
you can just save it out and just reload it. You can do the same in V-Ray, I think.
Which is
Um,
it's effectively saving a LUT.
Effectively, yes,
Yes.
right? So if you have your 30 images, right, and you did that once for these, well, you did it only for one image, then you kind of saved it and reused it all over again. So if something in these images changes, right, uh, then
Both
it's
read
kind
the
of,
same comment.
yeah. Well, Nena is being a troll again. So,
He's mad that we're interrupting his
well,
dinner.
no, it's not. It's not essentially the same work you do in Photoshop. You can do these things in Photoshop, but why would you want to if they're exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it easier to just do it in the frame buffer? Why open Photoshop at all?
I mean,
That makes
so
no sense at all. But what I was about to say is, something changes on the project, right? Your clients want whatever the hell they want, right? Something significant changes, right? The problem I have with the post that includes work is that all of that needs to be reset and redone if there's a significant change in your scene, or the let's say the bane of post heavy work, changing the camera angle.
yeah.
I mean, you're technically fucked. Everything you did has to be redone again. So the amount of time or hours you spent into this image can't really be reused. And this is something I obviously have a huge problem with from, an efficiency and pipeline standpoint. But that's also, down to the fact that you actually don't like modeling in 3D,
Hate it.
while I don't like, messing around with Photoshop.
I love it.
So I would much rather spend my time in Max than spend it in Photoshop.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like your feelings on we do not do post unless we absolutely have to for some reason comes down to two things. right? As far as motivation goes. One, you like being in 3D more than you like being in Photoshop. And two, you want to the lazy factor. I want to do as little work as I need to do to get the result that I want.
I would call it the smart factor, but yeah, you can call it whatever you like. Yeah, sure.
It's working smart, not hard.
Exactly.
They
It's
so
just that the fact is that, people will want to change things, and they do it all the time. We all know it, right? So this is just preparing yourself in 3D a bit better, just kind of circumvents this whole process. I actually have a whole flow chart somewhere with that.
I've seen that. We should have dug
Yeah,
that up.
you've seen it. Many people have seen it, I assume. Yeah. So it's, it always made much more sense to us, because I get seriously frustrated if I spent like 2 hours polishing this image like to the maximum I can in Photoshop, then somebody says, yeah, you can just, take that behind the barn and shoot it, because you'll have to do it all over again. That's I don't think there's a more frustrating thing than doing the same thing all over again. It's like,
I totally agree with you on that. I hate redoing the same thing, but here's going to be my argument on this: is that one is that I don't spend a lot of time in post on my professional work. If most of the stuff that I've streamed is like my Droki stuff, which tends to be very post heavy, right? Very, and I love doing that. Don't get me wrong. My professional work, I don't send anything, not even so much is this the right chair rendering, without it going through at least a little bit of post. But the final images for that, they look different between post and frame buffer, but not like, oh, that was terrible and now that looks good, right? But my feelings about post and why I think it's even though we have kind of the same ethos, I do think everyone should do some post, including you. I'm saying it. And here's my reason why is that everything that comes out of a renderer, straight out of a renderer, looks like it came straight out of a renderer, right? And there's just like, if you just do like a couple of like things to soften some of the harshness that you get obviously from all edges being perfectly sharp edges, adjust like glow and like the colors in a way that, like, unless you set up a specific LUT for any given image, you can't, there's only so much tweaking you can do from the frame buffer, right? Like, I think Blender actually has like a full color node workflow, right, that you can actually apply if you wanted to get into Blender. But simple things like color balance, adjusting glow, adjusting depth, and tone, noise, like those types of things take a couple of minutes in Photoshop, right? Oh, let's just take a little bit of red out of the shadows, a little bit of green out of the midtones. Let's, add a little bit of a soft glow to the whole thing, and let's add noise everywhere. Like, that's a couple of minutes, but the difference that the client gets isn't something that they can look at and say like, oh, I can see how this is so much better. But it's something that they react to on like a subconscious level, right? Which is,
you would like to think they react to it on a subconscious level.
I think that they do, because how often do you get comments from a client that are saying one thing and you know that that's not what they're actually reacting to?
Oh, that's most of the time.
Most of them, right? And so
Yeah.
I think if you can go in and you can make things feel just a little bit better and give it a little bit more of a I don't want to say analog feel, but a little tiny, kind of like, it's for a developer, it's a little bit bluer and a little bit happier or a little bit brighter in a way that you can control very easily in Photoshop and quickly. Like, these aren't things that you need to redo every time they want to change, right? But they result in an image that has just a little bit more of that the je ne sais quoi that you can't get out of a renderer. I think I've won that argument, folks. I think I have won that argument. I hope that we're still live and enjoying the fact that Chop is totally frozen. And I think I won. Everyone should do post now, all of the time, from here on out. And yeah, oh yeah, see that? You can, Discord is thinking about bringing Chop back. What he really needed, I think, is just a moment to compose himself and rethink his life decisions about post-production. I'm like terrified that I'm gonna get like a message from Chop right now that says my computer froze. Oh wait. Luca, I like that one. So good. Oh, this is fun. This is fun. Clearly YouTube is not ready for these two idiots to be on at the same time. Oh, let's catch up on the comments. We got a comment. Clark, thank you for saying at Droki when you had a question for me. It makes it really easy for me to visually pick up when we have questions. Chop, since we're on a little bit of a side tangent, I'm just going over, what do you call a little bit? Curves, LUT? Yeah, like, there's usually like a handful of layers in my finished images. Professional finished images, I should qualify. Most of them are like color adjustments. There's like a couple of filters I run in Nik color effects every single time. I don't reset anything inside of those. And so there's like a couple of layers, but it goes from an image that feels to me just a little bit cold or sterile to something that feels warm and inviting and a bit more emotionally engaging, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Chop, welcome back. Have you composed yourself after rethinking life choices?
It was Discord. It's I don't know what happened. Kind of lost connection to whatever the hell. But yeah, I mean, I get you. But there are scenarios where, let's take this example. So a few years back, we got this job, and we had to do 1,800 product images.
Yeah.
Right. So how exactly do you do, post, which everybody has to do according to you, on those?
I mean, I can tell you about a project I'm actually working on right now where by my standards, I'm not doing any post.
See?
But I am not sending them what gets saved out of the frame buffer.
What are you sending?
So I'm making like 30-ish images of like some product stuff. And one, they need to look super consistent. Like, the main color of the design can't be going a little bit warmer, a little bit, it needs to stay super consistent. So I basically take out one of those images, create a new action in Photoshop, do 6 or 7 like pretty simple adjustments, right? Little color tweak, little curves tweak, little Nik color effects, sharpening, noise, collapse, save, and that's the action or script in Photoshop. And then when I've rendered out all of the images, I just go to batch all those images, and it just runs the same. It does the same 12 steps or whatever it might be in Photoshop on each one of those images. So I don't actually open them and touch them myself.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I opened up powered up a computer for the first time in my life, so I don't know how Photoshop actions work. It's just, doing it for, let's say it's almost 2,000 images, right? Photoshop is not magically going to do it in like 2 seconds.
But you could do the same thing in DaVinci, right?
Could, but still, same thing. Yes, you could load up an image sequence, grade that sequence in DaVinci and do whatever, which is arguably way more efficient, actually.
It would compute faster depending on what you do in Photoshop.
Export it out as an image sequence again. Yes, yeah. You could definitely do that and save your grade and whatnot, which is, I would argue, like a lot better actually approach than doing it in Photoshop. Well,
yeah.
DaVinci has nicer colors anyway, and everything is nicer in DaVinci. But why do it at all? I mean, the result, the difference in the result is pretty much negligent if you're spending like this little time doing whatever the fuck tweaks you're doing, when you can just save it out. I mean, a lot of these adjustments that you're talking about can be done inside the frame buffer in the first place. On the very first image you're doing, you can adjust curves, you can adjust the noise, you can adjust the softness, you can adjust pretty much all of it. And you can apply a lot as well.
But with very specific constraints onto how you can use those tools that do not, like, you can't say that any frame buffer that exists is anywhere near has nearly the same control that you get from Photoshop.
Oh no, but it's not meant to. So
I agree, but I'm saying that those little things, at least for me, and this becomes like a bit of a value question, right? Of like, where do you draw that? Is it good enough line? And for me, I've never created anything directly out of any frame buffer of any render engine that was like, I cannot make that better in Photoshop.
sure, okay, but you
And
know,
I'm a perfectionist, Chop. You know this about me. You are too.
yeah. I agree. I agree. It's just that I think it's kind of in a lot of situations. I think it's just pointless. I just don't. The difference you'll get with your little subtle tweaks on this very specific thing, or you can just tweak it in the frame buffer and get like 99% the same result. This 1% is not. It's not valuable enough for me. That's just the way I see it. But it's look, it's not like I'm saying it should never be done or anything like that. It's just that in everyday work that we get, I just don't see the point, because you can do it, till tomorrow and back. The average client, and I'm not talking about everybody, obviously. The average client will never notice the difference, like ever. And that also has a lot to do in which specific industries you're working in, right? If you're working with like super high end real estate marketing and stuff like that, they will notice things like that. They're used to, having things printed and whatnot. It's a different mindset with these people. But your like general everyday archivist thing, especially for like tourism and stuff like that, dude, these guys only see blue skies. It's like there's nothing else they ever notice. So I just don't see the point.
So
And this is way quicker.
I almost only work with the former of those two client groups. Just kind of where I've ended up with in the
Oh, I
ArcViz
know.
piece.
That's why I said it.
So, question. So, if you were working for one of my clients, would you do post? Your audio went out, so you need to repeat that. I need it
Oh,
on
probably.
record.
I probably would. Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, I'm done. This stream is over. I'm not coming back ever again. Chop said he would do post in my situation.
Oh God. I was never against it. I just said we don't do it.
But I do think so. Like trying to kind of like
So,
wrap it together.
so Nenad wrote, you can compare it to a DSLR camera shot. Well, that's super interesting when you write it down like that, because yes, so you can compare it. For example, when you shoot with a Nikon, that camera expects you to take that image and edit it in Lightroom, because out of camera it looks like absolute shit, but it's made in such a way that you can pull out of it whatever the hell you want. And that's kind of the point. you know Everybody who shoots Nikon edits the hell out of their images because they can. The color profile and everything you get out of it is really, when you look at it raw, it's kind of shitty.
It's like shooting video in log or something like that.
Well, close to it, yeah.
Yeah.
That's at least my opinion. I shot a Nikon for years, but then you take a Fuji, which is like the best camera ever. You click the button, and whatever comes out of that camera is absolutely beautiful, and there is nothing you can do to it to make it look any better. So it's fucking perfect. Why do it if you don't have to? It's like when I switched to the Fuji, which I have like a mountain of behind me. It's suddenly photography became fun again, because all I did was point my camera, dial in my settings, and press a button. And at that very moment, I had a finished picture which looked exactly like I wanted it to look.
One of
Isn't
these
that like
one of
liberating?
these one of these days, Chop, I'm gonna rent myself a Fuji, because I'm shooting Sony these days. I'm gonna rent myself a Fuji. I'm gonna go out and take some pictures, and I'm gonna see what my reaction is. Because even when I go out and I'm like, I feel like doing some photography, right? So I pack up the camera, I hop in the car, I go somewhere. Even when I do that, the thing that's most exciting for me in taking pictures is taking a picture and being like, I know what I'm going to change. I know what I'm gonna do. Like in my favorite part of photography is editing the images afterwards.
That's like That's the ninth circle of hell in photography for me. It's like just I could never do. That's why I stopped using the Nikon, because the point where I have to come home and download these images to my PC, then I have to open up fucking Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever. Then I have to go through each one, and then I'm gonna enjoy. No, I don't want to do this.
Oh, I love that.
Who has time for that, dude? You obviously have too much time in your hands.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
swimming in time on this side of things.
Yeah. So, yeah, Oleg says it applies its own color grading. Yes, it does. Every camera does that. It's just
Yeah.
that Fuji's color grading is way better. So that's kind of what it is. But it's a love-hate thing, Some people hate it. I absolutely love it. So
Well, because at that point, it's a specific taste. It's the same with like Leica users, which are like
Yeah.
similar to Fuji users in the sense that they love the way that camera interprets color and value, right?
Yeah.
And like
Absolutely.
Sony is most criticized for its skin tones. Canon is most praised for its skin tones, right? Like,
Yeah.
because obviously it's taking raw data that it's not the same from sensor to sensor to begin with, and it needs to interpret that in one way or another. I've always been of the people that are like, yeah, I tried Sony and I'm going back to Canon because I hated the way my face looks. Well, yeah, like if you weren't going to do any post on that video or still, then yeah, that would be a deal breaker. But for me, I'm like, I couldn't care less because I'm definitely going to go in and do a little bit of post and quickly taking the red hue saturation and like giving it like a quick tweak. I'm like, yeah, could not care less about that fact.
Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense for you.
For me,
And in that regard, it doesn't really matter. The color science in the camera itself doesn't really matter for you at all. It's all about the ergonomics and how you like using it.
Dynamic range.
Well, okay, yeah, but nowadays that's not really a thing. Most top of the line cameras are somewhere over there.
Yeah.
You can pull out a shit ton of dynamic range out of pretty much any top of the line camera today. So,
but that, like, if you're going to do a lot of post, that's the easiest one. What I really don't want to have to do is ever take 2 exposures of anything. Right?
Okay, yeah.
It's a value question. So I the funny thing is I think with this is that with all of this, it comes down really to 2 things, because we've both given an example of like, I'm doing a project right now where I'm really not doing any post, and there are situations where you would do post by your own admission. I think like, I know people were expecting us to fight on this because our workflows are so different, but they're both motivated by the same thing, which is like a twofold thing, which is that I want to spend as much time doing the thing that I like doing, right? For you, that's 3D. For me, that's post. And in the way that's most efficient for me to get things done, right? Like, I can fix things in post faster than I can fix them in 3D, even if I have to repeat that.
Sure.
Right? So, like, it's an efficiency thing of applying it. The reason I'm not doing post on this project is at that point, it's no longer more efficient, right? It's a worse way to get a consistent look across 30 product images. A much, much worse way.
Okay, I mean, yeah, for that also, I think works if you think about the things your typical clients tend to change, right? If they tend to gravitate towards changes which have to be done in 3D anyway, then kind of minimizing everything you add on top of that is actually like 100 times more efficient. Because I always say that, I prefer way more to have my render farm do the work instead of me. Right?
Yeah.
I prefer everybody to do the work instead of me. It's it's just the way it is, right? So Nenad's asking, how much time do you need to align the image color exposition in 3D software as opposed to post work? Well, not much, honestly. It's not rocket science.
You're doing the same thing in either case, right? You're adjusting the black values, the color, temperature, and contrast. At the end of the day.
I'll add to that. It used to be a big deal before we had interactive rendering.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, before we had IPR in any form, that was a fucking nightmare, and I completely agree. But nowadays it's not really. I mean, who cares? pretty much the same thing, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, shit, Zap is here. Hey, Zap.
Zap, what's going on, buddy? If you do post programmatic instead of manually, After Effects. I mean,
Everything is better than manually.
I use a lot of actions for like the things in Photoshop that I do on every image. I do that with an action. I don't use After Effects that often. I don't really like After Effects. I do set up my LUTs for projects in DaVinci Resolve because then you're really just looking at color and contrast, and there's nobody that does it better than DaVinci Resolve.
Well, we agree on that. You know, I was actually exploring, you know, a pipeline of doing post only in Resolve.
I remember that was when you were looking at
Yeah, we had a lot of discussions
at an Aries workflow, right?
ACEs.
ACEs, yeah. So I've not tried that, and I don't intend to.
Yeah.
Did you abandon that? Are you no longer doing that?
Well, I didn't really have time to finish all that research and everything because, yeah, ACEs is awesome, but it's also kind of it's not made in anything about ACEs and all of these, you know, color corrections and everything is not really made in a way that you can just, you know, turn something on and off and be certain that this is pretty much what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
Because you have input LUTs, then you have output LUTs, then you have the color space that you're working in and the color space that you're supposed to export your image from, and everything has to align for you to actually get the most use out of it.
I'm already like my brain's already drifting off by having to like I just want to look at the thing and like if I need to crush the blacks, I'm just gonna crush the blacks right in the frame buffer and deal with it.
But the thing that happens is once you succeed in getting all of this info in and out the proper ways, the minute you start moving the sliders in Resolve, you'll notice the difference.
It's really satisfying.
Oh yeah.
I believe that.
Because the way it kind of graduates from the darks to the brights, you know, it's not linear.
You never end up with those like occasional hard edges of like, oh yeah.
No. It's completely different in the feel of how the colors change and what you're actually adjusting. So it's very hard to describe. There's good videos about it on YouTube. Though.
Is it analogous like to adjusting colors in like a lab workflow? Have you ever used a lab that looked at like lab color space?
No, but it's very similar to, you know, trying to, for example, when you first try to adjust the exposure on an HDR image versus a low dynamic range image. You know? It's a completely different thing, right? So in ACES, it's just way better and way more artist friendly.
Can you send me one of the like just test renders that you made, like just like the thing that you would take into DaVinci Resolve?
I could, yeah. I just need to find some.
So that I don't have to figure out how to make one to see if the end result is worth learning?
Well, the new update of V-Ray has like the ACES workflow inside, and it does something to the image too. You can like, you used to be able to like turn it on with Max Script, but now you can actually, you know, click a checkbox and then you can.
Love me a checkbox.
But it's not, you know, I have to admit, it's still not perfectly clear to me. You know, there's this internal thing that you turn on in V-Ray, but what with the actual output? I mean, Zap would probably know more about that than I would at this point. He is the rendering technology magician. But it's just, you know, I'm still waiting for somebody to put out, you know, guidelines like, okay, for it to work properly, you need to like click here, do this, then export it in this format, which when loaded over there will actually bring up everything you need in the proper thing, you know, because you're trying to connect two softwares, for example, you know, V-Ray and DaVinci, and get all this abstract data to kind of work with each other in a proper and correct way.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, he says, oh my.
Well, while he's hopefully typing us a very short, clear, easy answer, I want to bring up what Patrick said. He's referencing Tanya, his wife, who says his approach on doing post to photography is that whenever she takes photos, she edits them. She says the photo has to mirror the exact situation, how she remembers and felt it, not how it really was, which I absolutely agree with. But that's very much like that's a painter's approach and not a photographic approach, right? Which
Yep.
I am all about. Then there's a really, if you guys follow David Ariew, I'll try and find the link to this article he posted. It's like a 30-page article or something like that about how they approach lighting design, color, everything for the Dragon movies from a lighting perspective. And he talks about specifically this difference between photographic or painterly, right? Like painters, the brightest thing in the image is typically like also the most saturated, right? Like if you think of like an impressionistic sun, right? Like that's like a bright yellow, whereas in a camera, that's always going to be blown out towards white. And like the Photoshop cube, they move towards one lives in this world and the other one lives in this world, the way that values tend to change. But I'm totally on board with Tanya, which is that I want the picture to give the feeling that I want. I don't care about its accuracy.
Well, that's perfectly valid. I mean, who can tell you, it's not the right thing to do with your images, right?
Nobody. Well, anyone can tell me. I just don't have to listen to anyone.
Sure, yeah. But there's always this line when we're discussing things like that. It's between artistry and whatever the hell art viz is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always come back to, the ingenious quote from Lasse, who said that we are not artists and we're providers of creative services. And that for me, explains a lot of things, because on one hand, it's perfectly fine to talk about art, and some projects even end up as art, and in some you can actually apply all of this artistic need and want that you have. But on a lot you can't, and that doesn't even come into the formula at any point. It's just work you have to do, right? It's think of it like, it's more of a craft than art at that point, because
I agree
art
with you
isn't
on that.
expected
If we're talking about art
from
with
you.
like a capital A, then I totally
Yeah,
agree.
yeah,
But
yeah.
otherwise, like a creative professional is someone who sells some form of
Yes,
art
yes,
with
yes,
a
yes, yes.
lowercase a, right? By
Yes,
by
yes,
definition.
absolutely. I'm talking about, high art and all of that goes with it, right? We've discussed this many times before, but there's a tangible difference between a lot of the stuff that gets done in this industry and actual like real art. Yeah, sure. You can do this all the time, but like I always say, you try and get like super artistic while working for a hotel chain, they will tell you to fuck off with that shit and give them their images. It's the point is, sometimes your run of the mill standard everyday pseudo photorealism does the job perfectly fine, and that's actually what's expected from you.
Yeah. So my
Sometimes, not always, and it's
my
not better
caveat.
or worse. It's just what is.
Well, it's better or worse for any given person. Like if that's not for me, that would be much worse. If I had to do that, I would quit the profession, because I don't enjoy I don't enjoy creating anything that I'm not like really excited about, and not in like a capital A art sense, and just like I look at this image and I'm thrilled that I made it. And so like if you need if you need a portrait taken, right? Like you can get somebody with a phone to go, there's a portrait, right? A headshot, or you can hire a professional photographer who's going to do lighting and everything else. Now that portrait's not going to be like high A art, right? But that's a very different thing, and that's going to send a very different message to anyone who looks at it.
Yeah, absolutely,
Right?
absolutely. But
Um,
there's also, I think, a better comparison would be, you could hire a photographer with a studio who would point some lights at you and take your photo for a portrait, or you could hire, I don't know, a painter, and then you would get like a really artsy portrait of yourself. And this is more akin to the difference between these two things. It's not like
I don't in
people
art
who,
viz. I think it's between the dudes holding the iPhones and calling that like professional photography and people that are using a studio. I mean,
I
like,
don't think so. I don't
oh,
think so, because
look at some of the
if
bad
you're
art
holding
viz
the
that we've
iPhone,
both looked at. Like, there's images
well,
that's just like,
absolutely,
holy fuck.
but that's not what I'm saying though. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay,
There's
I'm
good
missing you.
archviz. There's
Yeah.
good archviz, which is not what you're talking about.
Oh, absolutely agree with you on that. Okay, yeah.
That's the
I
point,
completely
right?
misunderstood you. Yes.
It's it's a different subset of clients, and if it's a different subset of expectations, and your your product is supposed to answer those expectations. So,
Yeah.
doing it the other way, there is no better way of doing it. It's just what you're actually being paid for to do,
But
and that's it.
also what you want to do in the sense that if you were doing A and you wanted to be doing B, continuing to do A all the time is not going to get you any B work,
Mm.
right?
That's very true. That's very
Um,
true and very probable. But then again, those now we're coming into like super complicated subjects because I have certain very hard opinions on those kinds of things, doing this in order to be getting more jobs of that and stuff like that. Because whatever people think, and with the internet and all of us working online and blah 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 blah, a lot of this stuff is still like extremely local, whether you like it or not. Most of your clients are from the States, are they not?
almost all of them.
See, that's what I'm talking about. And the States are not the only place in the world where imagery like yours specifically is asked for.
Yeah.
But still, all of your clients are local.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same with us. Not everybody, not everybody needs the kind of images we do, but there's a lot of people in the world who need them. And then still, a lot of our clients are still local, and that's how it works for pretty much everybody. there's
Yeah.
there's always outliers to this thing, but it is what it is. So if you take that into consideration, then you have to look at the geographic position of wherever you are at, the market at that place. I'm willing to bet there are countries, where entire countries, where nobody would pay for the kind of imagery you do because it's too expensive for them and they don't
Yeah.
fucking need it. So it's not as simple as wanting to do something. There's a lot of people who are perfectly capable and want to do something, but they will never get the chance to, because the world doesn't work that way. It's not enough to want something. You just have to get lucky at some point. Because everybody
Yes.
who ever succeeded likes to say, "Yeah, I put in a lot of hard work and then it kind of all worked out for me." That's the biggest lie ever. That never fucking happens. There's millions of people who put in like extremely hard work every day and they're super talented and they will never make it because they're just not lucky enough.
I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, like, you can look at the work that I do, and I don't think that there's any coincidence or anything that I did that reflects the fact that it's very similar to the world of work that I did when I was at D-Box, where I started, right, in New York. And so, like, that's not completely outside of my control, right? That was my first job in ArcViz, and that's the direction I went, and that's the trajectory that my career has continued on. Largely by chance, right? Like, I applied to a lot of studios, and I took the offer from D-Box. Had I gone to work with Eric at Luxagon or something like that, my work today would look very, very different, and I'd probably be living somewhere else. But I think the idea, the one part I don't like about what you just said, though, is that there's like a fatalistic, there's nothing that those artists can do to achieve what they want, and that's something that, like, I fundamentally, on like a personal level, absolutely disagree with.
Oh, I didn't say there's nothing they can do. There's everything they can do. I just said that despite that, they might still not succeed, which is a
Okay,
fact.
that might is
Because
very
otherwise,
important. That might is
yeah,
very important, though.
otherwise everybody would be successful, but that's just not the way the world works, is it?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much, there's only so much you can control at the end
Yeah.
of the day. But I almost always default the position that there is something that could be done. Now, whether or not you're willing to figure out a way to make that happen or take whatever risks, costs, or whatever else that come with that decision, I think that if you are in a country that you want to be doing New York luxury residential stuff, right? Kind of the little world that I live in, and that's really what you want to be doing. And you live in a country that there's just zero market for that. There are ways to move,
There are. Yeah.
right? Now, whether or not
But
that's worth it to
but
you,
that's exactly Yeah, that's exactly my point. There are things to be done, but some people will not be able to do it. And whether they could be extremely talented and have done everything else properly, there might be this one thing that will just permanently shut all of that down for them. So, it's a moot point in the end, right? You All I wanted to say is that the amount of effort you put in is not necessarily correlated with the success you'll get out from it,
I think it's at
right?
least correlated.
It's a necessary requirement. That's
Yeah, but I
true.
think there's a
Without
correlation.
it,
That's the chart that like looks at all the classical composers and the number of masterpieces, widely accepted masterpieces, and it's a direct correlation to how many they did, right? And the same way, like look at Mir's studio, right? That has like obviously like a very specific workflow. They have a pretty small team, but their team is from everywhere, right? Now
yeah,
you might be able to you could work your ass off for forever and potentially never get hired by them, right? But that doesn't mean that that's not worth the effort and that's not a possibility, right? Like if I wanted to play professional basketball, that's probably never in the cards for me. But there are people shorter than me that have made it,
sure, sure. I
right?
mean, it's possible. Everything is possible, right?
Almost.
But I think the difference is I'm kind of yeah. So what then it says, if you suck at what you do, you'll never get any work, no matter the luck. That's true. I mean, but the core point of it all is yes, you have to be good at it for it to even count, and you have to kind of try hard and do all of the things.
Yeah.
But the only thing I wanted to point is that despite all of that, that's a prerequisite for success, but it's never a guarantee.
Yeah.
That's probably the better way to put it.
Yeah, like before you try to get any of that work, you already have to be doing the type of work that you want to be you're capable of doing the work
Yeah.
that you want to do, right?
Yeah,
As
I
a
was just
as a first step.
all of this stemmed from the fact that you said that if you're doing work type A and hoping to do work type B, you will continue to do work type A. It's something people often say. You have to put, I don't know, images like this into your portfolio if you want to get work.
Yeah.
That's kind of like that type. That's perfectly reasonable.
Well,
But
I mean that brings us up to the other interpretation. Nice little segue there. I saw what you were doing of the question, which is to post or not to post, not about post production, but about posting your work publicly or images that you make.
oh, hey Dean,
Dean, what's going on, buddy? Always good to see that
gonna
Poly Machine logo.
open up another beer. This is
Um,
making me thirsty.
I envy you that. I would open another one, but I'm on a one beer per lunch limit this and next week for client reasons. A lot of
We
work.
don't tell anyone,
What's that?
even if we don't tell anyone.
It's really just I've there's this asshole that does all of my booking for my schedule and you know what projects I take and when I fit them in and he looks a lot like me and he really kind of overloaded the next 2.5 weeks.
Shit.
Real prick, but so we're dealing with it the best we can.
Yeah, but yeah, back to the
To post or not post your images.
yeah. That's a very multifaceted question, isn't it?
Yeah, because I don't think that's I don't know if I want to call that like a wrong question. I think that it's a very complex question. What should you post? When should you post it? Not when. We're not going to get into like how to get people to like your shit. But should you post images of your work? I don't think that that's a terrible question, to be honest. Except why should you or why shouldn't you is a better question than should you.
Yeah, yeah. The why is always the better question, isn't it?
Almost always. I think that there's a reason that we haven't had any wrong fucking questions that start with why.
Yeah, it's I love seeing people's work. I love when people post awesome stuff, and then you kind of scroll through Facebook or whatever, Behance or what your platform of choice is, and you really can like get inspired and see amazing things and just be in the loop of what's going on the market and in the world and everything. But it's like we talked about this privately like a few times. It's one of my greatest disappointments in life is the fact that I think self criticism has died as like a civilizational, quality. It just died.
It,
And I don't know if you
it,
agree
it,
with me
it,
on that, but
it's on life support, I think. I
yeah,
don't think
I
it's.
think
I'm not, maybe
probably,
not dead.
yeah, it's probably in the ICU somewhere. But it's
Got
just,
COVID.
I find it, I find it absolutely uh, like amazing and completely, I'm incapable of understanding for a lot of things I see posted online. Like, why would you ever like post this? Because it may, I don't want to come off as rude here, but
Look at what channel you're on. You're
true,
gonna
true,
be
okay.
okay.
But
You're gonna be okay.
the point is, we may have been raised differently or something. It has to be something with that, right?
Yeah.
Everything starts at home. But I would be so embarrassed to like post some of the stuff that I see. And it's not about it's not about posting it or not. It's about posting it where. Because
Yeah.
the way I see it,
Well.
right? You come into a group of, let's say, I don't know, anybody, professional football players, you know,
Yeah.
and you just picked up a ball like 2 days ago. You've never seen it before in your life. And they're trying to, show some skills to each other and shit, what they
Mm-hmm.
can do with the ball. And would you find it perfectly reasonable and normal to just, come into their circle and say, "Oh, hey guys, let me show you something"?
No.
Because I would be embarrassed as fuck. It's like
But
I
but
can't see myself doing it
but
ever.
I think that we've lost some perspective, right? And you know, let's be honest. Neither one of us are spring chickens at this point. And I can look back at the work that I made 10 years ago that I was really proud. I can remember being very proud of it when I made it and thinking that it was really good, right? And I look back at it now and I'm like, holy fuck, that's terrible. But that's part of the learning curve, right? Is that like your standards for what's a good image and your ability to differentiate between something that's average and really good and fucking amazing, right? Like when you're starting and you're down here on our experience and talent chart, right? Like everything above this line looks pretty much the same to you, right? And then as you get closer to that, like your kind of like ability to see the differences between like, yeah, like it just gets more refined in the sense that like, and as you get better, you get a better eye of looking at your own work and everything else. And so there's a definitely like a self awareness on top of self criticism, which is to say there's that great Ira Glass thing, which is like accept that the things that you make at the beginning are gonna suck. Everyone
Yeah.
starts right. I don't remember where that is, and I don't remember. Someone made a really cool typographic treatment of it. But even the amount that you think the first things you make when you're trying something new suck, even the amount that you don't even usually realize how much they suck until you get better and you can look back on it with more wisdom. And so I think that you and I both have a tendency to be a little bit overly judgmental and quite a bit cynical. And you say like, why would you ever show the world that that's terrible? But to them, if that was the first image that they made or anything else, they're just seeing things in a completely different spectrum, right? Now that being said, if you can't differentiate even like within your own work the good stuff from the bad stuff, this is usually the first piece of criticism. I do a decent number of like portfolio reviews for people that are like, hey, would you look over this and tell me what you think? And almost always I'm like, you have to remove like half of the images. Do you see how cool this one is that you started with? They're like, yeah, I love that image. And do you see how bad this one is next to it? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, if you show 10 images and 2 or 3 of them are great and like 4 of them are pretty average and 2 of them are really bad, they're saying that like right now your average is on the negative side of that, right? Because you couldn't even create a portfolio of 10 images that suggest I can create 10 consistently great images or
Yeah.
consistently good images, even depending on, where you are in the spectrum. So like you should be able to look at your own work and be aware of that, like not necessarily judgmental on where you're at, but saying like, this one wasn't the best. I'm still learning. There are,
Oh
there
no,
are times and
awareness,
places
awareness.
for where to post it. But like on top of being self-critical, self-awareness, I think is like a different but equally important thing.
Oh yes, I mean it's kind of key. Somebody says so. Yeah, posting crap is okay as long as you wait for critics. Yes, but how often do you actually see that? The way I see it, for the most part, it's just posting crap. Nobody wants the criticism because once it comes, it it's usually met with, very rarely do I see people who actually post something online wanting, like seriously wanting criticism. It's not the classic, Facebook posts, comments and criticism welcome. It's almost never welcome
Well, because
because it's
like,
going to be
typically it's
met.
like this doesn't look good, and they're like, yeah, but the client insisted on it. That I know, I knew that too, but and they get really
Yeah,
defensive, really
yeah,
quickly.
yeah, yeah. But the thing is, that happens to us a lot of time. We have something in our finished images which we don't like because the client really insisted on it. But then I just don't go and post it in groups and shit because then I would be forced to say, yeah, but we kind of fucked it up because the clients insisted on that and they're paying for it. So there's nothing really I can do about that. But yeah, that's not something I want to post somewhere
Yeah,
because of that very reason. I
there,
think it's like it's a fair response to somebody pointing out, but you can also write that beforehand if you're kind of aware. Yeah, guys, look at this. I'm sorry about the very obvious thing that's wrong. I
yeah,
know it's there. I couldn't do anything about it, but let's talk about anything else. I find that perfectly fine. That's okay.
yeah. But
But
if it's something like an overly blue sky or whatever, if it's most of those things like fixed, now I'll post it.
yeah,
Right, like, and that brings up, I think, a question that we're not really we're kind of talking about, like posting like personal work or like whatever else. I think there's also the question of like what you post publicly for your work, what you're getting paid to do, right? Which is, how are you curating how a new client is gonna see you, right? Because like what we were talking about before, with like the type of work you produce tends to be the type of work you continue to get.
yeah,
And when someone comes to you as a new client or a potential client, they are coming to you with a very specific expectation of what they're going to get. Right? All of my little post production tweaks, if I didn't do that, I guarantee you the majority of my new clients will be upset about it. Right? Because
they're expecting a specific look, which is why they hired you.
exactly.
I mean, this is kind of what happens everywhere, right? You hire people, professionals, based on their previous work, expecting to get something of the same quality,
Yeah.
where quality is actually perceived. It's not on a measurable scale. It's
Yeah.
what they think your quality is.
Style will be a better word for than
Yeah.
quality in that situation, perhaps.
Yes, but it's not, they, when they look at it, they think of it as quality because, oh my God, this guy does good work, so we're going to hire him. But
But like,
what they define as good is actually the style that you're putting into it.
yes, right. Like no one goes to Frank Gehry and asks for a Zaha Hadid building, right? You go to
Yeah.
one or the other, not necessarily as a claim of one being higher quality than the other. You go to one because you want a Frank Gehry building style wise, and the other one you go to Zaha Hadid for that style,
Yeah, exactly.
right? But I think that especially if you're like growing a client base, if you do a project that looks like garbage, do not post it unless you want to do more work that looks like that,
Yeah.
right? Because
Well, that one is kind of self-explanatory. I mean, everybody does crap projects every now and then. It's a part of life. Everybody has them.
but there are firms that I can point to that it's on their web. I'm not going to because that would be mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely,
But
absolutely. Yes,
but
I
like
agree.
there are firms that are big firms within our industry that like you look at their website and like it's wildly inconsistent in quality, right? And in style and everything else. And so what you're saying is that if I hire you, I'm grabbing the dice and rolling it to see which artist I get because some of these on your website, the things that you have chosen to post to promote your work and your services, some of them I would absolutely love to have And if the other ones, if I get them, I'm gonna ask for a fucking refund.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
And so
that's obviously a problem, right? If there's such a discrepancy between, which artist you get. But I guess in very large companies that's always possible. But if it happens, it's not really necessary to post it probably online.
it's two questions. You want to minimize it within your firm. You want to be creating consistent work for your clients so that their expectations are met or exceeded by what you actually produce for them. So there's like that problem, but then there's also the like, why would you choose to advertise that?
Yeah, that one I don't really get.
There's a reason that I'm not sitting here in a fishnet skin tight shirt.
But we started with something different though, and I was just reading through the chat, and it reminded me, and you mentioned it as well, at some point that you were doing portfolio reviews, right? So I had the misfortune of looking at, like, for some reason I was looking at the a shitload of CVs and portfolios, right?
Mm-hmm.
I told you about that while
Yeah.
it was happening, right?
Yeah.
And it was like a lot of them, dozens. And when I finished all of that, I was I wasn't even disappointed. I was angry for like at least 4 or 5 days afterwards. Honestly angry because I couldn't fathom how somebody could care so little about what they're trying to achieve and do with themselves to send CVs that look like that and portfolios that look like that, fully expecting they will get a job somewhere and be hired. And I'm not talking about the art or something being man, it could have been like better. No, 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 no. I'm talking about idiocracy, the guy trying to put a cube in a circle. That's
my
that's the
my my not even 2-year-old has figured that one out already.
Yeah, so that's the level I'm talking about, right? And this is the lack of self-criticism I'm talking about. I'm not even talking about, people who mess up some things, but they don't have enough experience to see that they messed up a
Yeah.
few things. So somebody with a lot more experience will come in and say, "Yeah, but it's obviously you fucked this one up." Because if you look at it better, you'll see that this doesn't point there and this is wrong in your horizon. Whatever the fuck it is. No, 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 no. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about completely missing the mark on everything imaginable.
But see, I think that you are giving them too much of your own energy and frustration by even being frustrated. Like if someone sends me like a bunch
Oh
of
yeah, yeah, yeah,
nonsense
yeah,
and
yeah.
says like, "Can you comment?" I'm just like, "No." Right? Like you have not put any effort to explain why and this,
I'm gonna subtly add
right?
that I love how I end up being the bastard and the cynic all the time, and you just tell everybody, "No, I'm too good for you. Go fuck off."
Not
I
that's
just,
not
I
what I'm
just like
saying.
to have it noted, okay, in the chat. And just everybody, please notice what he did just now. So I'm not the bad guy always, but it's
I'm not saying that you are by any
I'm
means.
going to tell you what happened, right? I'm going to tell you what happened. So I took it upon myself to like answer everybody who wrote personally, like answer, not with a no,
Yeah.
but with a very sincere, like, okay, look, this is what you got to do. This is where you need to go. This is what you need to learn. This is what you need to work on. This is bad. This is bad for these reasons. This is bad because of this. And those are like really fucking long emails.
Yeah, and
It
they're
took
emotionally
4 days.
taxing to write.
It So it took me 4 days to go through all of this, and like because I wanted to help.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
that
your
that
intentions were fantastic.
you know how many replies I got to all of these emails?
The
Let's say there
cynic.
were a few dozen, a few
I'll,
dozen.
I'll, I'll give you a percentage. I'm gonna say a single percentage of replies.
Yeah, yeah. There's 2 replies
Yeah.
to all of that, right? And those 2 replies were actually, which is a funny correlation. Those 2 replies were to the emails that were the best written in the first place.
That's not a
Okay.
coincidence.
That's not a coincidence at all. But that speaks about manners more than anything else, right?
Yeah.
But while on the subject of self criticism and writing emails, there's this one point that I can't seem to, talk enough about lately. And it's like, if you're looking for a job, right? And you want to get hired, and it doesn't even matter what the company you want to get hired at does. And you're supposed to send a CV, and you're supposed to maybe send a portfolio, or God knows what it is, depending on the job you're looking for. And your email has four sentences that go hello, or dear whatever, or whatever the fuck. My name is blah blah blah. I'm sending this in response to your call, or phrase it however you want. And then, like, blah blah blah. I would like for you to take a look at it. Blah blah. Sincerely, your name. Right? How the fuck do you get that wrong? It's like, it's four sentences. Okay, I'll tell you the first thing that goes through my mind when I see an email like that. So it takes 2 minutes to write and 1 minute to check.
Yeah.
So if you can spend 3 minutes of your life to send something that could potentially change your life by getting you a job which you'll be paid for, how can anybody expect focus, determination, efficiency, or you being actually fucking useful for anything if you can't do three sentences right? I'm not asking you to be fucking Shakespeare, but it's like, what the hell, man?
But like at some point you have to draw a line where it's just like, nope, gone.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I absolutely agree. But isn't it, the way I see it, isn't it like tragic? When has
yeah.
that become the normal?
I mean, here's my thought is playing a little bit of devil's advocate. Is
Right.
is it that this is becoming more of a problem? Because obviously you and I both perceive it. We've talked about this a lot: lack of self-awareness, lack of self-criticism. Like it's very hard to grow without any of those things. And but if you were to take your town and the number of people you know in your town without the internet,
Okay.
right? And like one circle beyond that, like if you put out without any electronic means, any internet means, if you put out a call for applications, how many of these people with complete and utter lack of self-awareness would apply? Here and there, right? A couple.
Yeah, maybe a couple. Yeah.
But like a lot of them, even if you have a little bit of self-awareness, you're like, yeah, but that's John's friend, and so if I send him this, I'm going to be accountable to that. And so it will probably be a smaller percentage than the number of those people that there are. Whereas now, given the World Wide Web and how easy it is, I can have an auto search for, ArcViz jobs or whatever it might be that tells me every time, and I can just do the stupid thing. And I never have to be accountable for it because I'm never going to see that person. They're never going to even know who I am or what my face looks like or any of that kind of stuff. And it only takes me fucking 20 seconds to crap out these four really, not full sentences, right? And so they're writing more of them to everywhere in the world, all in all. And then the perception on our end is like, where did all of these fucking people came from? They came from the internet. They were always there. They just didn't have access before.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
wasn't so easy.
But that's exactly my point, because I'm perfectly aware of that. However, if I was spending 20 seconds to apply to a random job on the internet to people who I'm never going to see ever if I don't get the job, and who will forget my name 10 seconds later after they read this email, I would still get it fucking grammatically correct.
Well, yeah, but, you're not
Because,
one of those people.
but yeah, it's like, but, I can't fucking wrap my head around this. How is it normal? When has that become normal? It doesn't matter where you're applying to. If I mean, for the most part, if I'm writing a Facebook comment, which is supposed to be like, I don't know, funny or whatever, I can't make myself write it wrong because it's going to stay there. It's like,
But like, but that is not the norm, and I don't know if like I was in charge of reviewing portfolios when I was at D-Box, so I looked at a lot of portfolios and a lot of cover letters. When I was at Kitbash, whenever we put out like a call for new modelers or concept artists, like
You
pouring
must
in
have gotten,
from all
yeah,
worlds.
quite a lot.
And I would do the same thing as I would write a form response, and that form response would take me a while because I want to thank them for taking the time. For a lot of them, I would add like one sentence in. It's like an explanation of why they were turned down, especially if it was clear that they put in effort. But for the people that were like, "Hey, check out my portfolio," as a way to apply, canned response done. Like within 5 seconds, I don't even look at that portfolio because that's not a person I want to work with. Within 5 seconds, that's in one ear and out the other, and I'm moving on, and I'm not carrying any emotional baggage from having done it. Right? Just because it's like the Henry Rollins thing when he talks about hating you too, right? Like he's just like, he's like you're giving them too much of yourself, right? Like by expending the emotional energy that like is more than they put in the first place.
Yeah, but it's not about, the energy being reciprocal or anything. My, well, you of all people know my attitudes towards education, and how much I actually care for that stuff and how important it is to me. And I think we're just massively failing at every aspect as a fucking civilization.
I don't know what it is. I am before COVID. I'm really working hard right now and have been for the past 8 weeks or however long we've been locked inside, and we're dealing with the biggest idiot in the world in charge of our country, of trying to be a lot more positive in general, which is kind of like the Bill Gates, the letter that Bill Gates and Melinda Gates write every year,
Yeah.
which is almost always a like, here's the things that our world's facing, but like because we get so surrounded with negative news, right? Like, and there's the immediacy effect of like things you get exposed more to, you assume your ability to calculate their actual proportion statistically is like just fucking terrible, right? We're really, really bad at it. And so we see a lot of negative news and we assume everything's bad because 99% of all of the stories I saw, or 99.99999% of all of the stories I see are fucking negative about this and that, and then the world's going to hell and everything else. And so we assume that is a actual representation of how things are in the world. And I think that with like the emails, like the Patrick email that he posted in the chat, "Dear sir, please see portfolio. I need job now." Okay, so that's all about him. That's not somebody I want working for me.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Canned response, but I see that email and I either just give him one of my canned responses or I just delete it and don't respond, because like if you didn't put any effort into sending it to me, why should I give you any effort in return? Right?
Yeah. Well,
But you have to emotionally disconnect yourself. Otherwise, you drive yourself crazy, like you did during those 4 days of trying to explain to everyone how they could have done a better job. Which, while motivated from like a really good place, like you'll burn yourself out doing that shit.
Oh, this was more of an experiment than anything else, but I genuinely wanted to help, because those are,
I know.
I love when people are interested in, CG in general,
Absolutely.
especially younger people, especially in Croatia. There's not a lot of us. It's so nice to see people show interest. That's perfectly fine. I was genuinely trying to help, and I don't think I'm way out of line if I say that the amount of useful info I summarized in those emails is worth a lot.
I don't think you sent me some of like the things that you were sending, and I absolutely agree. But it's just like it's the person that sends the email that Patrick wrote. Like that person's not going to hear anything that you say back to him. You could write them the world's greatest essay on how to get a job, and the next email he sends is still going to say, "Dear sir, please see portfolio." Maybe the P wouldn't be capitalized, right?
Yeah, but I kind of, to sum it up, I think I cared enough for the whole idea of it to at least try, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It did cost me some time, but I wanted to try just to see what's going to happen. If but on the other hand, there's been mentions of there's been mentions of not being worth it and blah blah blah, spending energy on people, and you spend more energy than the people actually doing the artwork and writing the email. That's all true, but those two responses that I did get on all of this that I sent were made everything absolutely worth it.
Here's my question for you. Again, continuing to play devil's advocate, which seems to be my role in today's talk. is when you like 2 out of 20, 30, something like that.
30-ish, yeah.
Um, Out of those 30, before you wrote any responses, and obviously before you got any responses as a result, if you had said, I'm only going to respond to 5 of these, would those 2 people have been in that 5?
Probably.
And that's the point that I'm trying to make, right? Like, is that
Almost certainly. But that's, that's not fair, really, because if I generally spend time to, summarize all this info, and I might as well go through all of it, you know, because it would be out of the taking these 2, which were fine, out of the equation. I don't think I could have ever decided which were the 5 best ones out of that soup of horror.
So then you should have just replied to those 2.
Well, I probably should have, but
because and
just
Lassie just wrote, at some point in life, your good traits become a burden. When you try to be good and help people at a certain point, you have a lot of people under your belt that exploited that, and I somewhat agree and somewhat don't agree.
Oh, I definitely somewhat agree. Yeah, that's like, that's like replying to the message from that one guy on Facebook you don't know who just wanted a bit of advice.
Yeah.
Know how that works, and then you say, "Oh, sure, man. I mean, no, I don't know who you are, but no problem. You just have to click there, and then this is going to open up, and then and immediately afterward, he's going to ask you for everything that ever happens to him in his entire life."
Yeah. But
those kind of people, I find it totally fascinating.
But I feel like I don't. If I trust my gut on any of those things, like Jay, who's in the chat, we met in a similar way via online. He asked me a question about something, I forget what. But even in his like initial message to me, you could tell this was someone who had put thought into the message he was sending me, was asking me a very specific thing that wasn't just like, hey, teach me how to make an image. Which is like, who are you? Right? Like, I feel like you can tell, like, even from that sentence, or lack of a sentence in some cases, whether or not it's someone you really want to, spend time responding to. What are you typing?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think we kind of sidelined a lot, but my talks, when I do talks, are always about kind of these kinds of these kinds of people, who intend to apply somewhere, who are starting out, who I always try at least to provide them with some starting point, some good starting info, which nobody talks about. Everybody talks about the fancy stuff, how to make Hollywood style art or whatever the fuck. Nobody talks about CVs and portfolios, unless it's like, make sure your portfolio is awesome, right? And whatever the fuck, But it's like I always say, portfolios are also not really a good standard of measurement, at least not for a professional studio. They're actually very bad measurement, because we've talked about this a million times. It's like, if you can do your amazing image, but it takes you a month, you're perfectly unhireable. That's like exactly equal to not being able to do it at all, if we're talking about a studio with serious like production pipeline.
You can teach someone those skills, but you can't teach them to want to learn. Right, like, but like I think like you started that whole thing with like how like frustrating and angry writing those 30 responses ended up making you, and that's why I'm saying like at that point you're giving too much, right? I forget who made the comment of like putting in more effort than was put into the work that you're commenting on, and like in that case,
yeah, absolutely, that perfectly stands to reason. Okay, I'm not trying to avoid that thing. I'm just a naturally good guy. That's all it is, right?
It's your friendly neighborhood chop. Yeah. So guys, if anyone needs advice on their portfolio, their business plan, and image, you want to talk to Chop, you don't even have to write in full, complete sentences. He'll give you a response.
No, I'm gonna, learn from Mike, and I'm just gonna answer no. That's what he does. So
No, it's
if you
usually
get
a
a
canned
response,
response or no response.
yeah, if I write no to your emails, then just call Mike and tell him.
And no is short for call Mike.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Chop, we've been going on for nearly an hour and a half, and I have a ton of work to do. So I think that we've come across a couple of things today. We've decided that there's not a right or wrong for post production, and we didn't even get into things that always make sense for post production and never make sense for post production. We're not good at staying on topic.
No.
But I think that there are reasons and justifications for doing both. I think that we can both agree with that. And I think that we're both very happy with our own individual workflows, and I think that that's maybe the most valuable part of that. Right? Is do what makes you happy, and gets you paid. Hopefully at the same time. And just be with the whole posting thing, from professional to personal for everything else, it's really just be a little bit self-aware and mindful.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much.
That could sum up a lot of our points that we've made on all of our episodes.
Yes, on all of our podcasts. Yeah, just
care at least some. Care at least a little bit.
These 10 crucial seconds before you click that post button, just try to look at it again.
Give it a quick read through. Trap, thank you for being on. It's always such a pleasure to have you on. We're going to have to have you back on again soon.
Looking forward to that.
Yes. To everyone in the chat, thank you for hanging out with us very, very much. We do appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed it. We always enjoy it. And, we kind of hope that passes off. And so I hope it did. But yeah, happy Tuesday to everybody. And I'm not sure what we're going to be doing tomorrow, but Patrick, who's in the chat, is going to be with me on Thursday. I'm not going to say we're not doing Tie Flow. What we're going to be doing has a little bit to do with what we were talking about today. It's going to be good. So that's Thursday. But otherwise, guys, have a great rest of your day and hope to see you guys tomorrow. We'll be doing something. Chop, what do you got for everybody?
Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for being with me yesterday in the chat while Mike was sorting out his Windows update issues. And we promise we'll get back to the podcast, okay? But it's just it was tough these last several months. Some things,
since we started, it's been very tough.
Yeah, it wasn't in the stars, but we're thinking of things and we'll try to make it work. But in the meantime, you can even look at us while we talk nonsense.
Yeah, and this is easier for us to do, so there'll be
this is way easier because I don't have to edit all the audios. That's great.
And I do want to point out, just for posterity, that in our podcast, Chop does all of the post-production.
I do all of the post in the podcast, but that's why it sounds so awesome.
Yeah, because post-production's done to it. Post-production makes things awesome. I think that's just the note that we need to end on. I'm just going to go ahead and mute your microphone. And post-production makes things awesome. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We will be back soon. I will be back tomorrow. Be well. Love each other. And
Didn't stop. Yeah, do your own boobs.
Boo.